1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. Level check. 1, 2, 3.
purple as everybody else.
Up you sit goes green. And then
Good evening and welcome everyone to this Overview and Scrutiny Board Spotlight Review of South West Water. Please note that we are live streaming this meeting via the Council's YouTube channel to encourage more people to engage in our public meetings. The proceedings will also be recorded. Please can attendees refrain from watching the live stream as this will cause interference for our viewers. The purpose of the meeting is to discuss issues of concern regarding services provided by South West Water and to see how we can work together to improve outcomes and communication for the residents of Torbay. I'd like to thank the representatives of South West Water for taking their time to come to the meeting tonight and all the residents who have put forward representations as part of this review. Please note that there is an ongoing investigation of Brokenbury Quarry and the investigation is currently at a stage whereby it is no longer appropriate to discuss this matter in the public domain and accordingly it will not be discussed as part of tonight's meeting. Please be assured that all the representations made regarding Brokenbury Quarry will be passed to the relevant council department to look into as part of the ongoing investigation. If they are not already aware of the comments, we will also be recommending that the Overview and Scrutiny Board is kept informed of the outcome of this investigation. We are not expecting a fire alarm test today. In the event of an evacuation, you will hear a recorded message requesting you to evacuate the building. Please leave by the nearest exit. The Riviera Centre staff will assist you. Once outside, please assemble in front of the tennis courts to the seaward side of the building. Please can I just take a moment to remind everyone to turn off their mobile phones and electronic devices or switch them to silent. And please make sure you switch off your microphones after you use them. Are there any apologies?
Yes, Chairman, we've got apologies tonight from Councillor David Thomas.
Thank you. We have before us the minutes of the meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Board held on the 6th of September 2023. Do I have a proposer and a seconder? Thank you. We'll now take a vote on the proposal. All in favour? Thank you. Do any members or officers have any interest to declare in respect of the items on the agenda today?
There's no indication, Chairman.
Thank you. And do we have any urgent items?
No, we don't.
Thank you. I invite Helen Dobby, the Director of Wastewater Services Recovery Treatment and Networks, Jay Harris, Wastewater Services Regional Operations Manager, and James Hodgson, Operations Manager from South West Water to do their report, if that's okay. We are on a schedule tonight, so I will request that people keep things short and to the point. Okay.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the invitation to your committee meeting this evening. Of got a few slides to run through, which hopefully will give background and information to some of the questions which have been put to South West Water, and then obviously some opportunity for discussion and questions. So the questions we've received focused on a number of core themes, mainly water resources and drought, our wastewater network, and particularly the operation of storm overflows, future capacity of the network, and bathing water quality. And the presentation will aim to cover those broad themes. You will already have received written responses to initial questions, but I appreciate that those may well wish to be explored further in discussion following the presentation. So in terms of water resources, slides got some visuals on there that show information around our total storage, around water resources for Torbay, and around reservoir levels, and they're really to give you a sort of visual representation of the data and analysis that we work with. We're really pleased that as a result of combined efforts across the region, we were able to lift all tubs restrictions on the 25th of September, so that's the temporary use ban. We recognise that we operate across a unique topography, so 90% of our water resources is derived from rivers and reservoir. Last year we faced an extreme period of drought, which provided the biggest challenge to water resources in the southwest that we've seen for a generation. The graphic shows that reservoir levels are more favourable at this point than they were at the same time last year. And our water resources management plan is a really, really important document providing the basis for future water usage. So on the larger map on the graphic, what you can see is the raw water sources in the area. The yellow lines show the raw water mains, which lead to our water treatment works, and then the red lines show the trunk mains from the water treatment works to destination, just to put a little bit of context around what you're seeing. So just talking a little bit more about the water resources management plan. This is a document which sets out how South West Water will maintain a secure water supply and protect the environment during dry weather and drought. And the production of that plan involves ranging a range of scenarios for each of our reservoirs, so that we can understand the impacts of storage under different demand conditions. So that's looking at different weather predictions, and also looking at past weather events, how reservoirs respond to rainfall, and so on. So that demand supply analysis is incredibly important. And what we also look at is how consumption changes, so how water usage is changing across our demographic. And I think a really good way of thinking about that is to think about how we use water in our own households, and how that water usage has changed over maybe a generation, in terms of for example, I'm probably going to sort of date myself here, but in terms of sort of that bath night kind of a generation ago, as opposed to, I know, trying to get my teenagers out of the shower now, and using the egg timer, going back, well, that was 4 minutes. That's a huge difference in how we consume our resources. So understanding customer demand is really important, and we're also considering key trends around climate change, population growth, and so on, being reviewed every year, with a new plan being produced every 5 years. So the 2025 target is to increase available water resources, and making sure that we are able to invest in the delivery of new storage schemes. So thinking about how we do that in our geographical region is really important. So looking at repurposing, for example, the use of quarries, expanding water network and desalination options and so on, so that we can support the region appropriately. A busy slide in terms of text. Don't expect anyone to read the detail, but really this is just to illustrate what that water resources document looks like. And it's really important to think about our regional network because of our peninsular geography. Our network is regionally integrated. So movement around the region is really important to us. Thinking about how we consume water is also really important in terms of thinking about how we can improve things like leakages and so on. And we continue to promote our free find and fix offer to customers who have private leaks at their homes. We've seen a really big uptake in that service. We're now fixing 3 times more leaks than before the offer began. And that's saved enough water so far to serve the equivalent of 8,000 homes. So that really does make a difference. We're also looking at how we can support businesses. So all of our non-household customers were able to continue to use water where it was required during the TUBS period, and we've also offered free leak repairs and water saving devices to businesses across our area. And also there is a grant scheme provided for water saving ideas through our innovation fund, and Chair, we can give details of the right contact at South West Water to make sure that fund can be accessed. So just to talk a little bit now about storm overflows. I'm going to see if I can make the technology work here. So this has an animation that shows how storm overflows work. We'll circulate the slides afterwards, and it actually also has some audio to it, which you can listen to at another date, but I can explain what it says. So our storm overflows are built into the sewer network systems, and what they do is they work at times of high network pressure. So for example, when we're experiencing really heavy rainfall, they then take excess volumes of water out of the system, and that's when they will discharge. And what that does is it stops the flow from backing up in the system and affecting homes and businesses. What is really important to acknowledge is that the majority of flow continues to be pumped and treated at the sewage treatment works. It's a small proportion that is released through an overflow, and the discharge is highly diluted. So it is generally over 95% rainwater and surface water. Some things to understand around storm overflows is that in larger catchment areas, the drain down period can take longer. So that's why when you look at the live data, it can seem that the overflow operates after the rainfall has passed. So also some of the overflows might be located inland from a beach. So you can get, because of our microclimates, sometimes you can see a coastal blue sky dry day with not very far away a completely sort of different weather status happening. In the winter, storm overflows can also be triggered when excessive rain can't be absorbed into already saturated ground. That's just to put context around how storm overflows operate. When an overflow operates, we have a system of monitors and alarms that let us know. So individual monitors can be really, really sensitive. Because they're out in the environment, they're also subject to weather, so they can be sometimes triggered by detritus, so leaves, twigs, they can sometimes work when something moves against them. So we have really good site presence. We're able to spot when that happens, but that can be something which also plays a part in the live data that you see. Storm overflows can also operate if a blockage occurs in the network, either downstream or close to a storm overflow, and that allows us to be able to understand that that's happening and go out immediately and deal with that issue. So storm overflows were built as part of the network system, and we have permits from the Environment Agency to operate them. It is absolutely clear to us from customers, from communities, that looking at storm overflows and alleviating the amount of times that they are triggered is something that we need to go further and faster in reacting to protect and enhance our environment, rivers and seas, and reducing spill numbers. So we've listened to that message, we absolutely hear that, and we're accelerating our investment to reduce the average number of spills to 10 or less by 2040, and that's a decade ahead of the government set targets. So we absolutely recognise the importance of this, and we are really committed to making sure that happens. So in prioritising spill reduction, there is a programme called WaterFit. WaterFit investment is 330 million, reducing average spills per location to 20 by 2025, and then, as I say, by 10 or less by 2040. That reduction plan will be a tough target to achieve, and I think that the fact that we are trying to go ahead of the government expectation on that, we hope shows that our commitment is absolutely real to protecting the environment. To do that requires a really coordinated resource to accelerate the work. So we have a storm overflow task force, which is a dedicated team who are focusing on just delivering this piece of work alongside the operational colleagues. And that's been submitted through our storm overflow action plan. So the reduction plan up to 2040 is currently with the Secretary of State, and we are expecting to have our return from the Secretary of State by the end of October. So we've talked a bit about how storm overflows work. What we also have is live data through WaterFit Live. So I don't know whether to put my glasses on or off. I can't know which I see best with. And what WaterFit Live does is allow people to see how storm overflows are working, how they're operating, and also looked at in conjunction with the data around bathing waters, which the EA published through SWMFO, give everyone a picture of how the coast and the bathing waters are faring. And as you can see from the bathing water compliance table for Torbay, there's some really, really excellent water quality. And the snapshot to the left of the screen shows the picture for WaterFit Live. In terms of how it works, the EA are responsible for assessing bathing water quality, and how that happens is they take periodic samples through the bathing season. That's then published on SWMFO, and wider water quality, for example in rivers, is assessed by the EA taking a health of the water check, and that's done through looking at ecological status. So what life is in the river, what's the diversity of that transect, of that sample, what's the chemical status of the water body, and the condition of protected sites. There's more information around that if it's of interest on the Catchment Data Explorer website, and again we can give links. And that gives a health of water rating. South West Water don't monitor environmental water quality, but our environmental permits to discharge require us to take monthly samples on the quality of final effluent, which then obviously are picked up through the EA's water quality monitoring. So that's how that works through. So those permits give limited tolerances. They vary from site to site, and in addition we also measure volumes discharged, so we measure the volumes that sites are dealing with. Just to drill down into the WaterFit Live website live information, this is a snapshot that shows Meadfoot. Whilst Meadfoot meets excellent standards from the EA sampling, we recognise that there are a number of storm overflows at Meadfoot, and so you can see those temporary effects of quality when they operate. So when you see a blue pin through WaterFit Live, that means that a storm overflow is not impacting quality. And if I flick onto the next slide, it will show a little bit about the key for WaterFit Live. So when we see a green, the monitor is not activated. An amber means that a monitor has been activated in the last 24 hours. Red means that the monitor is activating, so it's live, that's a discharge. And a grey pin shows an asset undergoing maintenance, investigation or improvement. So it might be an asset that a scheme is being carried out on, or that an asset is under repair. So for example, at Meadfoot we recently had a storm overflow in maintenance, and that was because the Ilsham Valley pumping station had a fault on the BT line. Whilst that was being rectified, we would have shown that as being in maintenance. We also recognised that there was a variance in the summer on an amber alert for Meadfoot, where our data and the surface against sewage data didn't match. When we know that those issues arise, the more information we have, the better, because we can then investigate, we can have those conversations, we can find out what's going on and be able to fix it. So we speak with surface against sewage regularly to understand how our data might vary, what's going on. In that instance, surface against sewage found that they had a system glitch and there was some doubling up on reporting. So then we're then able to do system fixes and make sure that everyone's systems are working as they should. What we will also find on the website is latest spill data and 3-year spill information. So that's just to allow people to see a picture over time. We also show planned WaterFit investment on the site, and that shows investment that is approved and ready to happen. Where investment is being scoped up, agreed and consulted on, it won't be shown on the site because sometimes that takes a considerable amount of time and might traverse a number of business plans. What you will see in terms of investments on the page is the agreed, approved, programme changes. And just moving on to another document that it's really useful to be aware of. It's published on our website for information, but it's the Drainage and Wastewater Management Plan, which is the long-term plan outlining our approach and to managing sewage and wastewater for the next 25 years, and making sure that we include in that plan population growth, so looking at where we've got new housing developments coming on stream, but also looking at increased occupancy, so looking at population uplift, which has been really important for our region post-pandemic in terms of how how population shift might have occurred in the region and how consumption is affected. Documents set out how we intend to meet our service obligations, both for clean water and wastewater. And the data sets that we use are based on information from local authority, local and neighbourhood plans, and supplementary data sources, so Office of National Statistics data and so on. We liaise really closely with local planning authorities, so our planning teams will be working with council planning teams all of the time in order to make sure that those documents are reflecting growth forecasts, and it also means that we can involve developers in the planning process so that we make sure that we get the right level of capacity in the system, that we get the right connections, so we don't get misconnections and so on, to allow us to cope with infrastructure usage and increase. Any strategic works identified are included in our 5-year business plans, and that's, we have a statutory obligation to ensure that the necessary infrastructure is in place. So those planning conversations are massively important. More detail, as I say, can be found on the website. And just a little bit of a final slide around some work that South West Water has been doing with Newquay Town Council. So in order to make sure that we can engage with communities in the right way, speak to the right demographic in a catchment in a way that engages and isn't generic, what we've been looking at is how we can make sort of more bespoke, tailored programmes with communities. And Newquay is a really good example of where that's happened recently. So South West Water worked jointly with Newquay Town Council, some really targeted and tailored leaflets, posters, social media around how public could help to protect the wastewater network. So not only the general messages, but thinking about events that were happening in that particular catchment, where there were issues with some of the businesses around fat oils and greases, causing blockages. We were able to use that local intelligence that the local authorities hold, and your network holds as well, along with our promotion material and our local knowledge about the network and the infrastructure to make a real difference. And we're really, really happy to amend those materials and work with other communities and catchments to see whether we can make the same kind of headway and improvement, particularly as well when we think about some of the events that people have around the coast in the water as well as in the town, and how we can engage in making sure that we can support those in the right way, share information where it's relevant, pre-plan, rather than react and respond. So that's an offer to work with if the committee would like to take us up on that. That was a gallop through the slides. I've got Jay and James who have got the technical expertise on the patch as well. Really happy to take questions, Chair.
Thank you for a really informative presentation. I will now open up to the board for questions, but I would ask that members keep to the topic in hand and avoid repetition and try and stick to questioning so that then we can get the best out of it. Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you. Just coming to the WaterFit programme and water quality testing, I understand that water quality testing is only carried out in the main bathing season between the 15th of May and 30th of September. So do you think that gives a representative picture of the water quality all year round when it's not actually being assessed all year round?
Chair, that's a question for the Environment Agency, because it's the Environment Agency programme for the summer season. I know there are discussions around whether out of season samples can be taken to give that kind of information overview, maybe on a pilot basis, but that would really sit with the Environment Agency colleagues.
Thank you. Yes, I think at some point we'll bring in the Harbour Master as well, because he may be able to give us some information on that, but we'll just go around the table for a minute and we'll come back to that if that's okay, Councillor Huff. Councillor Darling.
There we are. Sorry, I was slightly struggling to find the button there. I'll shoot out all my questions if that's all right, because I think it's probably better than storing them up. So South West Water, 10.9% increase in dividends, £2 million payment to bonuses paid out to executives, and yet in recent days we've been told to enhance our quality of our water, that bills are going to have to go up very significantly. Are you actually running more in the interest of the shareholder than the user of the services? So that's my first question. I also wanted to explore about water monitors, these monitors. I understand that 10% of them are quite often broken. Some of those are in Devon. What's going on there? Can you explain why we have broken monitors? Sometimes in years following after year, water monitors are broken. Why? What's going on there? That's my second question. The third question, I really wanted to focus on Livermead Beach. It's my favourite beach to actually go for a swim on, because you can take your dog on there and you can go for a swim in the sea, and yet on the map it doesn't exist. And I note as well that there are, I think it's 27 releases of sewage potentially down that on to that beach, and you have no plans to tackle those spillages. Why? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I hope I've captured those. You might have to prompt me if I haven't, and we will take them across the table. Recognise the challenging position that the water industry finds itself in at the moment in ensuring that the investment in the infrastructure is appropriate to the needs of the region, and in terms of meeting customer expectation. South West Water is working extremely hard to make sure that that investment programme is not only bigger than it's ever been before, but also accelerated, and I'm sure members will be aware that our Chief Executive was one of the first to forego bonus, recognise the budgetary constraints, and I know that in terms of our current plans, we're working incredibly hard to ensure that customer bills are maintained. I feel it would be appropriate to make sure that I get the right figures around that back to you. So I'd suggest if I take that question from the chair in a written form through the minutes, we can respond appropriately, and then I can make sure that you get the appropriate figures back. I think that would be the right thing to do, Chair.
Thank you. Yes, the clerk will be able to pass that to you, and then we'll be able to feed it back to the rest of the committee.
Yeah, and then the committee can have the written response to that piece. I'm going to hand over to Jay and James on some of the local issues, because they will be able to give fuller answer on the monitors and the beaches under question. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. So in terms of the monitors and the 10% figure, we've got in the region of 1,300 sewer storm overflows across the region, and we have installed 100% EDM monitoring on those over the last few years. So with that number of monitors and in the locations that they tend to be placed within manholes, in storm overflow chambers, the conditions aren't always great for that type of equipment. So as with all electrical, mechanical type equipment, there is a risk that it fails. When it does, we're notified. We have alarms that tell us as such, and we've got dedicated teams that go around and fix those as quickly as they can. But it's a piece of equipment that unfortunately at times they will fail. With regards to Livermead, you might have to help me on that. Is Livermead a designated bathing beach?
Chair, if I may, Livermead's obviously a water ski lane, so that's probably why it's not there. However, we strongly urge to have that as a testing site also, because whether it's a water ski or not is somewhere we need to test to make sure it's fit for purpose as a resort.
Okay, so in terms of our system, the WaterFit system, if it's not a designated bathing beach as designated by the Environment Agency, then it won't be on WaterFit Live. I'll be brutally honest, have we got overflows that impact Livermead? I might have to hand over to James.
Yep, so talking a bit more locally, we do have Cockington Lane, which is very close to Livermead, one of our pump stations. I'm presuming that's the 27 spills that you're looking at. So we're identifying, all of our sort of top spillers. That's me. And basically working through the list to identify, what the problems are and how to reduce that number of spills per annum, and to hit the targets that Helen was referring to earlier by 2030 and 2040. So in essence, we are working through them and identifying them and resolving them.
If I can just allow the Harbour Master to come back in, he might be able to feed in some information.
It's in response to Councillor Harvey, in terms of the monitoring, we are actively working with the EA to encourage more testing throughout the entire year due to the pattern of use. Wild swimming's on a huge increase, so that's something that we're taking away, and I'll take that for action, but there's nothing to report as of yet.
Councillor Maddison.
On the subject of the EA and testing, is it possible just to reassure us that the standards, the grading of the water testing has not been subject to negotiation with water companies, and also perhaps that there is a sort of improving direction rather than any sort of concession made to the difficulties really that water companies clearly have at the time being. Thank you.
It's probably another question really for our Environment Agency colleagues. The person who looks after water quality at senior level for the Environment Agency is Bruce Newport. So maybe a request for information in the same way would help to give that full picture. I mean, as water companies, we absolutely feel feel the enforcement and regulatory view on us as we should, and our permits are, they are strict because they are protecting the environment, and that is as they should be, and that is how we would want them to be. That is what they are for, and we work incredibly hard to make sure that we adhere to them, because actually the objective is looking after the place that we live in and the place that we love. So that is what they are about.
Yeah, so I just thought worthwhile adding that obviously water quality, whether it's bathing water quality or our rivers, there are other impacts on quality, not just storm overflows. So I don't think we would be in a position just to be able to, as a water company, to be able to make those kind of, or have those kind of discussions.
Did you want to come back?
Just a little follow-up, if you don't mind. Just to ask also whether the fact that this is a UNESCO geopark has any impact on procedures or standards internally and ambitions and investment. Thank you.
I would suggest that that is a very, very specific question that we take away in written form so that we can respond fully. Certainly in terms of permit applications and permit responses, that would certainly be a consideration, but we can give a fuller answer if we take that one in writing.
I've got Councillor Joyce next, then Councillor Cowell, and then Councillor Harvey, and then I'll come to you. Okay, so Councillor Joyce.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, thank you all for coming. It has been informative. In relation to Meadford, because I'm a councillor for Wellswood, which incorporates Meadford Beach, obviously I get through emails and through different dialogues that I have with residents. Obviously, it's a major topic of conversation, and we've identified that it's gone through many different items of your presentation through today, so which is reassuring, because we're talking about it means that we're aware that obviously it's an issue. There's a couple of things I'd like to look at, though, in relation to if we're looking at the discharges and we're looking at 2020 to 2022, we're looking at a 35% reduction, so which is very good. We've gone from 123 down to 79. How did we get there? Is that by chance? Is that through infrastructure investment? Is that through intervention by South West Water? So how are those numbers have been impacted by 35%? So quite like to know a little bit about that. But secondly, in relation to the pumping centre, we're looking at WaterFit and 330 million, and we're looking out also at the fact that we're knowing that it's going to be a substantial investment and planning over a considerable amount of time. What would you think would be the time frames then, if we're looking at a substantial amount, based on when we might be looking to address the issues at Meadford Beach? I don't want to kind of make this negative, because I think there's a lot of positive that's here today. So I think the message is we've taken on board a lot of things that are happening in the area. We've got an amazing coastline, and you do your bit, to, obviously, to try to upkeep that. But we also realise that there are issues that residents do have issues with, and we're just trying to obviously make sure that we know that we're addressing them and they're top of your priority list as well. Thank you.
Yeah, hi. So related to Meadford, we're talking about Ilsham Valley Pumping Station. That's our large terminal site, right at the end of Meadford Beach, basically. So that, as a catchment, receives, the sewerage from all over that part of Torquay. So it's kind of in essence, the designated point that we do discharge should we have a storm overflow event. In terms of the reduction in numbers, I mean, year-on-year numbers, yes, they are driven heavily by weather. So, that's obvious. We haven't made any sort of significant changes to the way the site operates. It's continual capital maintenance, continual reactive maintenance as and when needed, but there hasn't been a shift in sort of policy, procedure, or anything different that we do on site. So in honesty, I haven't really got an answer as to why those numbers fluctuate. There is obviously a much greater focus than ever before. The increased monitoring means that, you know, more than ever before, we've got more information to study what we're doing, how it's operating, and make the changes that, you know, that we need to. So I think kind of all of that focus is what's probably driving the improvement in the numbers.
Just picking up on Councillor Joyce's point there about Meadfoot, obviously those numbers are significantly higher than the 2020, was it, that you were hoping to aim for by 2025. How do you envisage making that drop in that area?
So it's a reduction of 20 or below by 2030. What we are doing is employing a task force approach. So as James said, reductions tend to be through a combination of factors as opposed to a one thing. And that's a regional picture because of some of the complexities of operations in the southwest. Having dedicated resource, focusing on high spillers and then looking at a really focused action plan and then a delivery and working through those is how that's happening. So it's about having real focus. Jay, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I think, and longer term, it's, you know, these are combined sewage systems. They're taking foul flows and surface water flows. Yeah, and the long-term plan is to try and remove that surface water flow from the combined system to relieve the pressure that Helen was talking about in the presentation that the system is put under during, you know, times of heavy rainfall. So we're looking at infiltration reduction. I think, you know, particularly in Torquay, there's the Fleet Walk. There's the stream, I think, that connects into our combined system at some point. So yeah, there may need to be some further talks and discussions around where that can go. But yeah, it's medium and long term. It's about trying to reduce the pressure on the system, get the surface water out, and have that going elsewhere.
Which links into the question about capital programming. So there's a mixture there of reducing infiltration, increasing storage, and separating combined sewer pressure. As with local authorities, what we're managing then is a capital programme that needs to look at those priority areas and work out the run rate of them and the frequency for them. I think, again, that would be good for us to respond to via information with asset colleagues so that you get the fullest answer. But in essence, the programme is designed and prioritised and worked through very much in the same way that the local authority will be doing its own capital programming process. But with a commitment from the company that, you know, our investment is bigger than it has ever been before, recognising the infrastructure needs that we have.
Councillor Cowell.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation and coming this evening. Firstly, I've been sort of surfing around on your website in the last couple of days, and I think it's one of the best websites I've seen. And I think councils could learn a thing or two from it, to be honest. And I've used it on occasion, particularly to report leaks. And it's a simple process. But that's where my praise starts to wane, because I think one of our biggest frustrations as consumers, residents, elected members, no doubt employees of South West Water, is the speed at which they're apparently repaired. Now, I understand that if it's in a main road, it's going to be more tricky because you need to get road closure potentially and so on. Do you keep metrics of the turnaround between a fault being reported and it being attended to and fixed? And if so, where can we find that? Because I reported one in a residential area in a cul-de-sac, so not an onerous site, and it took about 4 weeks for it to be responded to, which for the size of the
supply into the property. And I also, and I don't know whether I'm alone in this, I wasn't aware until reading these reports about free find and fix, because I've actually been dealing with a friend of mine who's had a challenge about their water supply, and I would have pointed them to that. So maybe we can actually work harder on promoting that opportunity, but it's particularly that lead time around the repair of leaks. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. In terms of do we keep stats on when jobs come in, how we respond, what we do, etc.? Yes, we do. I think the way to deal with an instance where something hasn't worked or gone right for a customer, we apologise if that's the case, because that absolutely would not be the intention, and it's hard to know without knowing the details of a job, specifics, what's caused that. So whether it's because we had to do something specific technically, or whether there was a particular part, or sometimes there's a road closure needed. There's all sorts of variables that might fall into why a job isn't dealt with as quickly as it might seem on the face of it that it should be. So if there are individual instances, let us know and we can investigate, because if something has gone wrong, we can learn from that, and we can also make sure it doesn't happen again. So I think we would welcome the individual information. Thank you for the feedback on the website. Also, where we are signposting services for customers, absolutely, we would join up with councils to be signposts for us as well, because where we're offering services that make a difference, we want people to know about them. So, and we want people to use them, because that benefits all of us. So we can work out how to do that. Jay.
Yeah, I think it's in the response that you've had, but currently we are fixing around 2,000 leaks a month, which is obviously quite a significant number, and around 30% have been through the find and fix scheme that's been running. Also, sort of just from a bit of an innovative approach to trying to find leaks, we've been using satellite detection and even sniffer dogs and things like that around the region where it's in slightly more hostile terrain, if you like. So we are doing innovative things to try and support finding the leaks and getting them fixed.
One of the frustrations I think about it is when a leak is reported, I think you get a acknowledgement email, but then there's no progress updates to say it's been looked at, and then it's going to be fixed. It's going to take a week, it's going to take 6 months, whatever. So I think that would be useful, so that as councillors we can give that feedback to our residents, or the residents themselves if they're self-reporting. Thanks.
Yeah, I think that's extremely useful feedback, and I think we can take that back to the teams. And with anything that you report to any company, it's great to be kept updated, isn't it, with what's going on. So I think we can certainly take that back and feed that into the team.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really helpful.
Just picking up on the number of leaks that you're fixing, obviously from our residents' point of view, they sort of see if you're having to fix that many leaks, is the infrastructure up to standard? Where do we stand with that?
I mean, where there's a leak, obviously there's an issue with the pipework, and I think we are investing, I think, in the region of £87 million, to reduce leakage by a further 15% up to or by 2030. So, there are undoubtedly areas where the infrastructure is not in as good a condition as it could be, but the investment is there to support that.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey.
Yes, thank you. Just going to divert back to water quality again, if I may, and this may be one that needs to be directed to the Environment Agency. But in reflecting conversations with members of Surfers Against Sewage and some of our sea swimmers, there are concerns that there are loopholes within water quality testing that need to be removed, and that regulators can discount 1 out of 7 samples when there's an atypical short-term pollution event. I'm assuming there's some agreed definition between yourselves and the regulators as to what constitutes that atypical short-term pollution event, and can that be shared for transparency?
That's one for the Environment Agency. I would signpost onto gov.uk because that might be accessible as part of the guidance around water quality testing that's accessible to everyone.
Thank you. Councillor Douglas-Umber.
Thank you, Chair. I think most of what I was going to say has been asked by others, but it was really about water leaks. We've had about 3 leaks in my ward, water actually flowing down the street and flowing down the street for a number of weeks before there was any repair. I think the issue was that the pipe problem was in a resident's garden rather than within the house. And I'm not sure whether everybody is always that helpful about giving you access. I just wondered how you would manage that.
Yeah, access-wise, if it's a leak on our network, then we would have statutory powers to go in and fix a pipe. There's obviously a process to go through, and we tend, that's obviously a last resort generally. I suppose if it's a private pipe and it's a bit more difficult from our point of view, but we do have powers that can support us getting in and making repairs to our infrastructure where it's required.
I've got Councillor Lewis next.
Thank you, Chair. You've sent quite a few emails out to consumers recently. I read quite interestingly, you've got that you wish to develop new resources to increase supply by 50 million litres per day and reduce water by taken from the rivers by 50 million litres per day. If that's the case, if you're not taking it from the rivers, but you're trying to develop new resources, where is the water coming from? I mean, we're experiencing hotter and drier summers, so, it's difficult to predict the rainfall. So how are you going to compensate one for the other, please?
So, looking at information from water resources colleagues and our water resources management plan, there's a blend of things that we need to do in terms of identifying new storage facilities. So we're looking at quarry options, but also desalination as a way of being able to balance that supply and demand. The document to look at is around the water resources management plan, which is available on the website, and that will give you the finer detail on that. But it's a blend of those things.
I have Councillor Hutchings next, then Madison, and then Councillor Darling.
Thank you, Chair. So going back to storm overflows, do we know how much sewage has been mixed in with the stormwater that goes out into the seas? And is there a protocol in place to contain that spill, or what's the kind of what happens when it goes out to sea? Thanks.
We don't actually measure the volume from our storm overflows. It's a event duration monitor, so they measure the time that an overflow may be operating. 95% is rainwater. The studies have shown that there is no containment when it's going through the overflow. It's discharging at its designated discharge point and dispersing out in the sea. And within a tide cycle, it would have dispersed. But it's very, very dilute.
Yeah, thank you.
And I think I'd just add to that the reason for that is because it is only in severe overflow conditions. So if we are thinking about storm conditions and the ability to sample at points and safety and some of those operational considerations, that is all part of that picture.
Thank you.
Just picking up on that, do those licences that you mentioned from the Environment Agency, presumably they limit the amount that you can let go out through the overflows, and are we getting close to those limits, or are you well within them? Where are we with that?
No, there's no limits on volume. So
effectively the permits work in the other way. So we have a limit of what we have to treat up to a point, and then above that is what is then the storm overflow in excess. So it kind of works the other way around.
Councillor Maddison.
Sorry, you diverted my attention. I just want to go back to that, because I think it's right to say that storm overflows have also occurred in the summer. So what is the reason for that? If it's something that happens automatically when there is too much water?
Yeah, we do have dry weather spills, unfortunately. They generally occur when there's been a blockage, perhaps on the sewer network. So a blockage on a downstream sewer may cause the sewer to back up and spill from the storm overflow. Or if it's at a pump station where perhaps we have a mechanical failure or an electrical failure, or it may cause a discharge as well. But again, the EDM monitors that we have in place, we're alerted to that in dry weather and can obviously go out and sort out whatever that problem might be.
And if I can follow up, those monitors, you can actually see whether they're functioning from remotely, can you? Yeah, that's
absolutely.
Right. Yeah. And one last question, if you don't mind. Moving on to a different set of pipe work, but drinking water. So what proportion of your pipe work still has lead in it? Is that a significant number? And what is your plan to substitute with a better material?
So, Councillor, if I could ask that we record that question and then I take that back to drinking water colleagues so that we can answer appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Darling.
Thank you. I just really wanted to unpack a couple of areas. One is an incident on the 17th of September, and I was speaking to somebody actually in this building earlier on this week who is a surfing enthusiast. He turned up at Goodrington Beach and found water, sewage happening out on the 17th. Then he saw children playing in the sewage. They were not really realising why the water was brown. He tried to discourage the kids from being in there, and then he had to go and tell the parents, look, your kids are playing in sewage here. So it's probably more of a harbour master question. What should we be doing as a local authority to alert the community, because that's still within the water bathing season to do that? Should we actually, as a local authority, be putting up signage encouraging people to check the water quality before you take a dip and put a QR code up, because the vast majority of people have smartphones? And why, if we don't put signage up ourselves, should we be encouraging people to do that? And then I just wanted to return to my favourite dog swimming beach, Livermead. Why do we not care, or it would appear that we do not care, whether people who are water skiing are skiing in sewage? I'd welcome an explanation, or would that be a bit like Father Ted, where that would be an ecumenical question, but it's actually for the EA?
Are you able to answer those, or do you want the harbour
master to? I've got a sort of a part answer, as you might think. I mean, in terms of signing the beach, maybe the harbour master or someone else would be better off coming in on that, or Helen, go on then.
It might be one that we tackle between us. So in terms of water quality, pollution risk, in danger. I'm saying it's our environment agency colleagues. It is something which the Environment Agency recognised through the SwimFo app. Local authorities then sign on designated beaches once they've had that information. So that's how the process works. I would also just pick up on the point of what people see and interpret in terms of beaches and data and information as well as being really important area of ability for water companies, harbour authorities, local authorities and the regulator to work together in terms of information and education. Got so much live data available to us on our phones now. So actually being able to recognise what events look like. Sometimes there are runoff events caused by weather through agriculture and diffuse pollution. It's being able to understand what's happening in our environment and make sense of all the data that we have accessible, and understand that what that means in terms of how we use the environment and how we can be proactive as well as reactive and so on. So the process is Environment Agency and then local authority in the event that there's a pollution risk. And if I hand over to the Harbour Master, we'll.
I think, Chair, it's further collaboration is required. I think Councillor Darling's points are valid. We need better signage, but I would say you have to urge caution. Sometimes Mother Nature does change things. And I do recall, I'm not saying I'm completely accurate, but we had easterly winds and a lot of things were blown onto the beach and a lot of pollution was misreported. So I think we need to take that into account.
But we have made a note of the fact that you were keen to work with the Harbour Master as well and the coastal team. So I think that would be really useful. Thank you. Councillor Darling.
Yeah, just very briefly, I would say this is a gentleman who his day job is the water, and the fact that sanitary products are being washed up onto the beach, I'm really unhappy that we come from saying, oh, honestly, it's people misunderstanding thing. I think the fact that sanitary products were being washed up onto Goodrington Beach on the 17th is a very significant clue that it was raw sewage.
Understood and noted, Councillor. Thank you.
Presumably picking up on that as well, there's messaging around not putting sanitary products into the water system in the first place. I know it's an indication, and that's what Councillor Darling is mentioning, but I think there's work that we could do alongside the South West Water team around comms of making sure we're advising our residents to use the water systems in the best possible ways.
Absolutely, Councillor. And any evidence of those kind of items in the water is not what we want to not what we want to see. It's what we want to stop. Our 3 Ps campaign is the campaign that we worked with Nuki on. So actually, the only things that should go down the loo are the 3 Ps. Pee, paper and poo, and the more that we can get that messaging out, particularly in areas where we will have a lot of tourism and a lot of changeover of residency in terms of the year. People don't always behave on holiday how they might behave at home, making sure that we've got that messaging in as many places as possible. Absolutely, we'd welcome that.
Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, just a final one. You mentioned yourself earlier on that the South West Water CEO, Susan Davey, had forgone her bonus. And you mentioned that in light of the current cost of living crisis. Now, I understand that the bonus that she was due to receive was applied to water poverty initiatives, including Watershare. So feeding in from a lot of the people in my ward, if the CEO is acknowledging water poverty is a major issue in this region, how is £112 million shareholder dividend payment justified?
think, Chair, if I could respond to that one, if we could respond to that point in writing, that would be appropriate, if that's okay, Councillor.
Thank you. Any further questions from anyone? In that case, I'll open it up to the wider officers and councillors. Councillor Long.
Thank you very much. And I'll follow Councillor Cowell's lead and start off with a positive in that I find your colleagues who respond to Twitter very responsive, and I find myself often reporting leaks that way with a photograph of where the leaks are. That's very good. I was very interested to hear in the presentation about the number of plans you have, and I was noted to myself amusingly that you're almost as plan heavy as the council, and maybe that's why both organisations aren't moving quite as fast as the public wants on various things. Two quick things. I understand that in 2022 Ofwat was looking into what progress South West Water was making on leaks, and that was deferred because Ofwat wasn't sure about the information being provided. And then I gather that in May of this year, Ofwat launched an investigation into South West Water for the accuracy of the information relating to leakage and per capita consumption. I was wondering if colleagues here could sort of delve into a bit more about that and explain what those issues are. That would be helpful. And I also understand that in 2022, apparently only 37% of the allocated budget that South West Water has been spent on leaks. And I think tied into questions from colleagues about the amount of money on dividends, that might just tie into it's more about shareholders than customers. I'd just welcome some reflections on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. In terms of the Ofwat investigation, because investigations are ongoing, we're not able to comment on that, but recognise the question. I would suggest that the second question is coupled with the previous question on similar topic, and we respond appropriately in writing.
Okay. Obviously, when you respond to that, I know there was a number of questions from residents around the sort of value for money and things like that. So if you can expand using some of those questions that were messaged across to you as well, that would be great.
And absolutely. And in terms of value for money processes, what I can respond in is similar to local authorities. Our procurement mechanisms, our mechanisms for best value, our tender frameworks, etc., are all very, very similar to those that local authorities work under to ensure that we are getting best value for customers, and we do take that incredibly seriously, as councils will be aware, in terms of making sure that we have got efficient and effective processes, and that we are working smartly to protect customers' services and bill amounts. In terms of the comment around plans, I recognise them. I recognise that conversation well, and a lot of our plans are statutory requirements, so that again, in the same way that local authorities do, our customers can be sure that we are planning for the future in the right way, and so that those plans can be scrutinised.
Councillor Bye, I believe you had your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And if I can just kick off with a point of information, that the sea temperature in Torquay today is a stunning 17 degrees. So I think any pressure, any recommendation that you can make onto the Environment Agency that they continue monitoring the sea temperature in October seems, to me, very sensible. That's much, much warmer. For those of you who don't go in the sea very often, I only go in when it gets about 16 degrees. That's much warmer than it would be in May or most of June. So carrying on in October. Half the representations for this evening's meetings that I could see came from residents and were concerned about Meadford. So I would, with respect, ask if we could go back and just consider in a bit more detail. I'm going to sit down. I'm only small, you'll still be able to see me. I want to just refer to the report. The overflows from the Ilsham Valley pumping station Torquay in 2022 was 79. Previous years were higher, but it's about an average 100 overflows from the Ilsham Valley pumping station. Can you tell us exactly where it comes out and what exactly does come out, and how that can be reconciled and how we can reassure residents when the Environment Agency says that the water quality at Meadford is excellent. So we have Meadford Beach not very far away, where we have one of the best beaches, Blue Flag Beach. It is the place where I do occasionally swim, and yet we have about 100 on average overflows from Ilsham. So what comes out, and how can we reassure those residents who've made representations? Because reading through the report, Madam Chairman, I think half the representations for this evening were concerning Meadford. And I represent Meadford as part of the Wellswood Board with Councillor Joyce. We are the Wellswood 2.
The discharge from Ilsham Valley is out through Hope's Nose. And as we mentioned earlier, it will be dilute storm sewage, 95% stormwater. It is screened, so there is a screening operation at the pumping station, so any rag, sanitary debris is taken out, and discharges at Hope's Nose, which would so you shouldn't really see any impact of that discharge because it's screened and there's no debris.
Just to add, because I deal with the sort of operations teams that look after that area, and we had a lot of calls during the summer of discoloration in the sea, algal bloom, various other things that actually weren't related to the pumping station at all. So I think, again, it goes back to the perception aspect, and I think people see what they see and think it's a lot worse than it is. But as Jay says, you wouldn't expect to really see any discharge normally.
Can I say thank you for that reassurance? I had been led to believe everything goes out through Hope's Nose, but I think the perception and understanding is they see the pumping station, they see the valley, and they assume it comes out onto the beach. So everything goes out Hope's Nose, which is the best part of a mile east. Okay, that's very good news. Thank you.
Presumably it would be dependent on wind directions and tidal conditions as well, but maybe our harbour master can advise us on that. Any further questions from officers or councillors? Councillor Billings, sorry, I couldn't see you at the back there.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Couple of quick questions for our colleagues from South West Water, please, if I may. I think it's appropriate, though, to also recognise, bearing in mind the Council's aspiration to be a premier tourism destination, that actually, from the data we've got, 10 of the beaches in the Bay are identified as being excellent for water quality, which is clearly a really good outcome, and I think more than many other tourism locations that also have an aspiration to be a premier location. So that's a really positive thing that I think we as a committee need to acknowledge. But related to that, there's clearly still an issue with some sewage outflows, and bearing in mind the sewage outflows are the result of rainwater hitting the system, presumably, and too much for the system to accommodate. I wanted to ask, first of all, as first question, how many new attenuation tanks are planned over the next 5 to 10 years for Torbay as a way of hoping to alleviate that issue, please, as a first question. And then recognising that Torbay is developing as an area and will be building new houses, and my understanding is that a developer has the right to connect to the nearest point of the system. How at the local plan stage do you engage exactly with our development management colleagues to identify the spatial layout of how development should occur within Torbay in light of the network capacity within your sewage infrastructure? So that would be my second question, please. And then also two very specific ones. You've talked about your way of reducing leakage by fixing leaks, which is excellent and should be applauded. But I'm also aware that lots of infrastructure is beyond its design life in terms of black alkathene, I believe you call them communication pipes. So between your mains and between a water meter, is there a programme for renewing black alkathene pipes? And if so, could you talk us through it, please? Because pipe that's clearly beyond its design life shouldn't be continue to be in service. And then as a final fourth question, please, in relation to odours that are coming from your network, which are, for example, from manhole lids, are manhole lids as a matter of course sealed, please, or is this, if we identify one through resident queries, should we be drawing it to your attention, please? Thank you.
I'll pick the easy one first. In terms of the odours and manholes being sealed, no, they're not sealed as a matter of course. If we have a specific area where odours are an issue from the network, then we can certainly explore that. But by sealing manholes can have negative effects in terms of flooding if the system surcharges. So if there are specific locations that you're thinking of, then by all means let us know and we can look into that. New tanks, I don't think we have that kind of level of detail at the moment in terms of any plans for Torbay, but new tanks or civil construction may well form a part of the overall plan, you know, when we're talking about removal of surface water and surface water separation, but I don't think we have that level of detail at this moment in time.
No, I would suggest that so a 10-year programme for attenuation tanks would straddle the remaining of our price review period and two others, so that would come out through capital programming, through schemes during that period. But having noted the question, we understand that, you know, the committee would be interested in recognising how that plays out in the catchment. In terms of spatial development, at a strategic level, the conversation happens between the local planning team at the authority and our planning team in terms of recognising what the growth is across the area. Then at a granular level, the developer has to put forward their proposals for numbers of properties, etc., being connected to the network. That then has to be modelled to make sure that there is capacity and suitable infrastructure agreed in terms of part of the development proposal. So those conversations happen between our respective teams. It's important, you know, that at that point we're making sure that the capacity works, that we've built in capacity in our future plans, and we also have a team that look at misconnections, which sometimes happen, so that we can make sure that that isn't causing any issues as well.
We do have a spatial planning officer in the room at the moment. There was a question that was posed by the team that went on the end of the residents' questions. I wonder whether I can bring you in at the moment. If you can introduce yourself and your role, please.
Oh, thanks, Adam. I'm sorry, I've stupidly not got the exact question in front of me, but the the issue that we're facing as part of the local plan team is that it's not so much the development from greenfield sites that we can't understand, because we can generally control greenfield sites, but we know that a lot of development in Torbay will have to come through regeneration of brownfield sites, and a lot of that happens anyway sort of through below the planning system. A lot of it's permitted development, and it's really how do we tackle the issue of the legacy of shared sewers, where there's a lot of surface water going into the shared sewers, and how do we deal with the large amount of incremental, small amount of growth, and what can be done about that. So it's not, the issue we're facing is not so much, as I say, about the greenfield development. The greenfield development brings numerous other problems. It's the, for want of a better word, the urban creep and the urban densification issue, which in many ways is a sustainable approach to do development, but it does cause water problems. And the other issue that we're facing, and I'm not pretending to be in any means an expert on drainage or water supply, but it's not, as I understand it, the issue we're facing from Natural England is not just about foul water going into the sea. It's about overflows and the effect that has on salinity, and combined water overflows affecting the marine sac, which is an internationally important resource in Torbay. Thank you.
Thank you. I think in terms of understanding the real granular detail between officers and South West Water officers around the what and the how and the associated timeframes is the really important piece. I think what's massively important is that the dialogue is continued, and that the technical officers are working together, so that collaboration to be able to address issues is really, really important, because we'll be facing more complex issues around planning, around development, around how we access the infrastructure and we do it in the right way. So, you know, it's areas as well where we need to think sometimes of new ways of doing things and work out new hows and whys and whats around these issues. So, I would suggest actually that we perhaps take the conversation sort of offline between officers so that we can think about that approach. And I see there's already been lots of discussion. There's already been signposting around where we can give support and where we've been unable to give support. So there might be other mechanisms for that. I think we need to just continue that detailed dialogue.
Thank you. That's reassuring. Councillor Cowell.
Thanks, Chair. I think Helen's almost answered what I was going to ask, is how robust is the relationship between operational officers and strategic planners from both South West Water, the Environment Agency and Torbay Council. And I'm looking at David in particular because I'm assuming that there's probably a real opportunity to improve that line of communication.
And we welcome the opportunity to be able to do that. I think there's always good join up between the operational granular teams, and the strategic conversations happen. How we better join up the two parts of that in all areas is always a challenge, because I think over a period of time, sometimes some of the meetings that allowed that to happen have been eroded for all sorts of reasons, for all sorts of organisations as well. I think we probably all recognise that rebuilding that, particularly in community and catchment environments, is particularly important, I think, to successful schemes and working relationships going forward.
Thank you. Were there any more questions from anyone? Oh, Councillor Billings.
Thank you, Chair. I don't recall hearing an answer to my question about managing out the black alkathene that's in your system in the communication pipes to properties. And I was wondering whether if that's a matter that you need to, whether you could come back in writing on, please.
I think, yeah, unfortunately you've got 3 people from the waste side of the business sat here today, so I don't think we've got that answer to that one, but we can certainly come back on it.
We will take that one back to drinking water colleagues. Thank you.
On the subject of drinking water, I think there was one question from a resident about the quality of their drinking water. Is there anything that you can advise us on with that? I believe it was the first question from memory.
Chair, if you would allow us to take that one back so that I can respond fully, that would be appreciated.
Yes, of course. Also on that subject, there was one around water pressure and the fact that the water pressure was reduced during the summer season. Is that something that's routinely done, and do you notify the customers that that's going to happen? I think there was concerns around boilers and how things in the home work if the water pressure isn't as high as it was.
Thank you. So, again, this is a response prepared by our colleagues in that part of the business. So we are monitoring continuously water network pressure. So that ensures that we meet the standards set in our guarantee service standards, which is a set of adequate pressure measures to make sure that customers have the right level of pressure. Certain areas of the network are pressure managed to ensure safe pressure is delivered to customer properties to stop any damage to internal pipework and plumbing, and also to prevent the network from leakage, because obviously under pressure that can be something that happens. Therefore, that helps us to protect the environment by reducing the volume that we need to abstract from water sources to help safeguard future supplies. So that's the sort of generic response, Chair.
Thank you. Were there any further questions from anybody? Oh. Sorry, Councillor Long.
Thank you. I missed this one off my earlier questions. It was just, given the number of referrals to the Environment Agency that we've had this evening, as someone who is a caseworker for a living, and I'm in the middle of a case at work where two organisations, I'm not saying this would happen, but given I'm involved in one case where organisations are pinging things between them, I just wonder, as a suggestion, whether it's worth having another session with both the Environment Agency and South West Water here, because stuff by email sometimes doesn't work.
We would be very happy to attend with Environment Agency colleagues.
Thank you for that. I think we all recognise that there's a lot of partnership working that can happen here, both within the council, the Harbour Authority, and also yourselves and the Environment Agency and other colleagues who have interest in the local water system and quality. So I think, you know, I don't think if you're able to come back, I don't think this would be a one-off. We would welcome you to come back again and give us an update on all your plans and how things are going. And also so that then we can ask you any further questions that have arisen. But it strikes me that there's a lot of ways that we can work with you on things. Is there anything that you think we could work better with you on that we haven't covered this evening?
I think the opportunity to engage on some of the community initiatives and campaigns would be hugely welcomed, as would the right granular conversations and linking in with the strategic conversations around planning and development. I think that could be really helpful. We have also reached out to the Harbour Master collective meeting to be able to have similar conversation with Harbour Masters across the region. So yeah, I think those linkages we'll start to see the fruition of those collaborations. And I think the other ask is for information to be fed to us around any customer issues, any issues that come to you through your constituencies, because the more we know, the more information we have, the quicker we can respond and the better we're able to, you know, improve any of those situations, which is absolutely what we're about doing. So thank you, Chair.
On the subject of that, are we able to link into some of your things via our websites of like the water fit and also like the being able to report and have a leak fixed quickly, those kind of things, that then we can signpost people easily?
I've taken that back as an action, so there was some great feedback on the website, but some great opportunity for some even better ifs. If we can do that as an output of this meeting and show that as a sort of a real-time action, that would be fantastic. So I'll take that back to the team that make those things happen, those techie things happen, and we'll see what we can do with your council officers. Thank you.
Thank you. I think quite a few recommendations have kind of come out quite naturally. If colleagues are comfortable, we'll take a 10-minute. You do? Yeah. A 10-minute comfort break while we just kind of bring those together, and then we'll look to agree them, if that's okay with colleagues. Thank you. Colleagues, thanks for your input. If Teresa can now read the recommendations for us that we've put together. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So there's a number of recommendations following the discussions. So the first one is that all bodies and agencies included but not limited to Torbay Council, Torbay Harbour Master and South West Water be aware of the importance and interrelated nature of water systems in Torbay. They are vital to supporting the delivery of the community and corporate plan and the Torbay story vision of the premier marine and natural experience, whilst meeting the needs of existing and future populations and enabling urban regeneration to take place in a safe and sustainable way. 2, that South West Water be requested to liaise with Torbay Council and its partner bodies across the spectrum of water-related issues, including promote campaigns to raise awareness about the need to save water, protect the environment and ecology, e.g. not putting fat down the drain or flushing sanitary products or wet wipes, avoiding stormwater connections to the combined sewer network, to ensure sufficient monitoring and reporting of seawater quality across Torbay, and that this information is also shared with the public, to understand and plan for the infrastructure needed to accommodate growth, regeneration, climate change and permitted developments in Torbay, to support and encourage the use of sustainable drainage and water-sensitive urban design across the built environment. 3, that the Director of Pride in Place be recommended to provide guidance to pull together all existing policy relating to flooding and drainage as a guide for officers, members, developers, householders, etc., and that this to be made a supplementary planning document after the draft has been prepared by January 2024. Number 4, that all councillors and relevant council officers be encouraged to attend the planning modular session, draining and flooding issues scheduled for January 2024 to raise awareness of the issues and ensure appropriate considerations are given through the planning process and development of future policies. That the Overview and Scrutiny Board monitor the implementation of the proposals above in 2024 and invite the Environment Agency to contribute to the discussions. All councillors be encouraged to report any local issues with South West Water to provide key local data. That the Director of Pride in Place be requested to consider publicity and QR codes signposting the public to the beaches websites and the South West Water WaterFit and the Environment Agency SwimFo sites. That the Director of Adults and Community Services be requested to keep the Overview and Scrutiny Board informed of the outcome of the investigations into Brokenbury Quarry. And finally, that myself be requested to write to the Environment Agency and South West Water on behalf of the Board to request a written response to the outstanding questions raised at the meeting. Chairman, I need a proposer and a seconder, please.
Do I have a proposer? Councillor Cowell.
Happy to propose.
Thank you. And a seconder, Councillor Lewis. I'll now take a vote. All those in favour?
It's unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you. I will now close the meeting and thank you all for attending. Thanks for a great meeting.